Now I want to bring in Raul Ramos y Sanchez, who's an award-winning author. We had him on the show a couple of weeks ago. We didn't do justice to his new books, America Libre and House Divided, because I was busy raising money for KPFK from you all listeners. So I thought, we need to really bring back Raul Ramos y Sanchez and talk a bit more about America Libre and House Divided. Raul, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Antonio, and glad to join you on the show today.
From the top, can you tell me, your books, America Libre and House Divided, are now out. You can, listeners, you can access copies of them at raulramos.com. But before we talk about the books, I want to know a bit about the inspiration behind your writing of these two novels, Raul.
Well, following on the segment that you just did, I'm also Cuban, quite different in the political spectrum than Senor in Texas. But I actually was born in Cuba and was actually, my mom and dad got divorced because of the Cuban Revolution. My dad actually sided with Castro, and they divorced because of that. And I came to the States at the age of 7. But revolution already became, like most Cubans, it really became the linchpin of my life. So it's not surprising that, as an adult, I would write about a revolution, because once that you've experienced that firsthand, you realize how fragile a thing a government really is. I mean, the day that Batista left the island, he got on a plane at New Year's Eve in 1959, suddenly there were not enough soldiers, there were not enough police to keep control of Havana. One man leaves, yet suddenly the island's out of control. And that mental snap that happens in that situation is one of the things that I've always found intriguing, and thankfully the United States has never gone through anything like that, except for cases where we've had power outages and there have been riots, or we had a natural disaster and there have been looting. That sort of breakdown happens psychologically. And that was probably one of the areas that sort of inspired me to explore this, because beginning with the 2000 census, I got the sense that, obviously Latinos' population was growing astronomically, but I also had a very clear sense that the way that we were being portrayed was also very, very wrong. It was very stereotypical. It was very inaccurate.
So you come from Cuba. You come from Cuba in the 1960s, and where do you grow up?
Oh, I grew up like probably every other Cuban in the country. I grew up in Miami, Florida.
So is that where your books are contextualized, or is America Libre and House Divided?
No, they're in Los Angeles. They take place in Los Angeles primarily. The central character lives in Los Angeles.
So how does that happen? Did you move to the West Coast as a young man, or?
I've traveled a lot. My business has taken me both to the West Coast. We have a branch office in California, and so I travel there quite a bit. Also know, from looking at the facts, that more than 80% of the population, Latino population, is of Mexican descent, and also in the, Southern California, Southwest area. Also, just as a quick aside, I mean, it's also very interesting to travel. I also go to the East Coast. I go to New York. I go to Florida. I've been to Boston. I've been to a lot of areas where other Latinos, and Chicago, and the perception, even to the word Latino, Hispanic, they have different meanings in different parts of the country. And I think that misunderstanding that we have as a culture was one of the very first catalysts for the story. And so, back to your question, I said it in Los Angeles.
So you're sort of a pan-Latino then. You understand my drift with that word. You've got the universal. Or you have universalized yourself?
Well, I think that as an individual, when you come to the United States from a Latin American country, you assume a new identity that you never had before. If you're Colombian, you've always been Colombian. If you're Argentine, you're Argentine. If you're Guatemalan, you're Guatemalan. But when you come to the United States, you suddenly have this new identity, which is Latino or Hispanic. And so it's an identity which we adopt as a group for a number of reasons, not the least of which is the sense of banding together because of a sense of discrimination. And so I think that's another one of the themes that I worked in the novel, is that you have a very diverse group of people that are in the United States today that are from Latin America. And in fact, if you look at the numbers, from the standpoint of if all the Hispanics in the United States were a separate nation, it would be the third largest Spanish-speaking country in the world.
That's what I keep telling people. I think we got enough to make it on our own. Let's go right into your book now.
Sure.
Tell us the storyline, because when we finish, I want to talk a little bit about accessing our readers, our listeners to your novel. Tell us about the storyline. It's basically a two-part novel, right?
Well, actually, it's a trilogy. There's the third.
Oh, there's the third. Is the third done yet? Because I only have America Libre and House Divided.
No, the third is still in the stage of the very first draft.
I see.
Probably will not be out for another 18 months, so we're going to have to make do with those two for now. But the story is centered about a central character. It's really a family in Los Angeles. Mano Suarez is the main character. He's an ex-GI, Afghan vet, decorated, third generation, Mexican-American, barely speaks any Spanish. He has some terms of endearment that he uses with his wife and his kids.
That would be like Ruby, my producer, barely speaks any Spanish.
Well, my brother married a beautiful young woman from Torreon, Mexico, and she calls Americanized Mexicans pochos. And of course, Lalo Alcaraz has the pocho hour of power.
That's right. We wear it with pride.
So, and Mano is for sure a pocho. I mean, he is very Americanized, very loyal. He's the assimilated Mexican American. And over the course of the first novel, Mano goes from this loyal ex-GI to an insurgent whose goal it is to reclaim a Latino territory within the borders of the United States.
Aslan. Right? Let's bring back Aslan.
Well, it's close, but in America Libre, the first novel, it becomes the Hispanic Republic of North America, and it draws upon the philosophy of a fictional character, a fictional philosopher who I sort of concocted from a number of different sources, and this unifies because all Latinos, because of what I mentioned before, how we have this pan-ethnic identity now that we enter when we come into the United States. So it draws from the people who are not only the other Central Americans, but you also have South Americans and Caribbean Latinos, which are mostly on the East Coast.
Right.
All of them join together in this identity, which becomes, it's almost like the Frankenstein monster. You have all these disparate parts.
A lot of different bodies, different pieces, different body pieces sewn together. I don't know if I like that analogy.
Yeah.
That
becomes
Frankensteino.
The group. So rather than being Aztlan, which is primarily sort of a Mexican thing, it becomes for all Latinos the homeland. So even though parts of the Southwest were parts of Mexico and before that parts of Spain, suddenly a Puerto Rican, who is an American citizen, by the way, and is still called immigrant, suddenly they begin to take ownership and say, no, that's my land too. So this kind of pan-ethnic identity, which you alluded to, is part of the story as well. And it's forged by discrimination. And I think when you look at right now, I mean, I'm very active in social media. Every day I'm talking to people all over the country, Latinos from all different origins, and yet they're all offended by Arizona. They're all offended by, Russell Pierce and all the lunacies that are going on down there. We all feel it, and it's because of this discrimination that people are locking arms and joining together in ways that, were it not for that type of backlash, it wouldn't be happening. And so that's part of what is realistic and what a lot of people send me. Every time, Arizona comes up with another cockamamie anti-immigrant law, they always say, your book's happening, your book is happening.
or any of the other 25 states, other states additional to Arizona that have been inspired by the racist legislation in Arizona and are now introducing similar measures. That'll be a theme of a lot of our deliberations next week in the National Latino Congress, which is going to be taking place in Austin, Texas from Friday through Sunday. Raul Ramos y Sanchez, we're going to have to end the segment now. Before we go, though, I do want to make an appeal to you. I would like to, we'll talk to you offline about getting some, working out some kind of deal so our listeners can call in and for a reduced price or for a good, we'll work out some kind of sweepstakes so we can distribute some of your novels. Where do you leave off in The House Divided? Is it a full-scale revolution and final chapter to be written? Is that how it works out?
Well, the books right now would take us through first of all, the beginning from a time which is in the very near future, through a time in which there's actually an insurgency in the United States, the Latino insurgency, fueled by a backlash. It involves things like an internment of Latinos in quarantine zones in cities that take place because of things like having a patchwork of local laws. So Latinos are all concentrated in these safe haven communities. It makes it much easier to quarantine them when these.
Oh, that's interesting. Bantustans.
So there are a lot of So the book begins. Book 1 ends with the beginnings of the insurgency. Book 2 ends with the insurgency fully underway, and then Book 3, I'm not going to tell you.
Right, remains to be seen.
It does take us to another level.
Well, I want to thank you, Raul Ramos y Sanchez. Listeners, you can get his books through raulramos.com, America Libre and House Divided, and we need to talk offline and see if we can work something out to get you some more sales and our listeners more engaged with your 2 novels. And we anxiously await next year the final in your trilogy.